You're listening to Hidden 250, where history, culture, and travel come together. I'm your host, Karen Aaron, and join me as we go beyond the surface to explore untold stories, overlooked destinations, and the people and communities shaping America today. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Aaron, and I am your host today from our episode 6 of America's Hidden 250. This is our podcast where we talk and we meet with people to learn more about overlooked stories, people, places, and things that is missing from that traditional American narrative. So today I am so excited to be joined by a wonderful, wonderful person, my dear friend, Stacey Toussaint. She is the founder and owner of Inside Out Tours. She's going to talk to us about an amazing subject during Women's History Month called Women Who Have Crossed Borders by Force or by Choice. So I'm excited to have Stacey on this podcast. I want to go ahead and introduce her, have her talk a little bit about her company, and then we'll get started right into the subject. So Stacey, thank you so much for joining me, and let's talk about Inside Tours and what you're doing around town.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation to join you. Inside Out Tours is a full service tour operator and travel agency that's based in New York City. And what distinguishes us is that we do have a social mission. So, in addition to seeing iconic New York, what we do is we amplify the voice of historically marginalized populations, including women.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. So Stacey, I've known you for a few years and just love the work that you're doing, not just up in New York, but also all around the country and all around the globe. So kudos to you for being intentional about being mission focused and making sure that people understand that when they're in a tour or on a tour, that it's more than just another attraction, that you're also not just learning something new about a destination, but also being immersive into that story. So Stacey, to get started, just want to just ask you a couple of quick questions. So, through your work at Inside Out Tours about, telling deeper and meaningful stories, so many that people are not familiar with, what drew you to focus on history through the lens of tourism and people and places when you bring people into town?
Well, first is an issue of access. Everyone has access to education on these topics, whether it's because of where they live or perhaps the opportunities
Mhm.
that they were able to enjoy. So, what we do is we really do public education. That's what tours are. People think of it as, of course, you're having a fun and engaging time if you're on a good tour, but it's public
Yeah.
education. And it is a very egalitarian way of disseminating information. And so, since we know that so many people these days feel like their history is being taken away from them, or their
Yeah.
stories are not being told the way they were once told, or maybe their stories was never told, our
Right.
role is to tell those hidden stories and to tell it in a manner that is inclusive.
Wonderful, wonderful. So in the narrative, in this the subject for today's podcast about women, and I think that it's also very important because so often as women we are kind of missing from that traditional American story. And Hidden 250 is about uncovering those overlooked narratives. So why do you think so many women's migration stories, whether by force or by choice, have been historically underrepresented?
Well, first of all, we can look at the fact that many parts of this country started by being established by English common law, right? So, under English common law, women were really subject to their husbands or to the next male figure. Their legal identity was absorbed. And so,
Okay.
in terms of having an individual voice, if you're considered to be the extension of someone else, often the contributions of women would just not be noted, or they wouldn't have opportunities to make those contributions. So part of this history being hidden has to do with the fact that women were denied the opportunities to really exercise their full talents and also to be seen for many generations. And that's all women. And of course, when you deal with women of color, then you're dealing with things like chattel slavery, which, of course, made them not even considered human. And so when you
Yeah.
look at that big picture, you have a situation where we really have to dig for these stories. And that's part of what Inside Out Tours is really dedicated to doing.
Love this, love this, love this. And it's just interesting because so often the story is around American history or colonial history or, so many other historical facts in any given day on any given destination. But that piece about women and what their role and placement is in America's story, it's often not there. So kudos to you for at least identifying that there's a missing narrative there. So,
And
so
people are very hungry for this. That's the thing. People know something is missing. When they hear these
right,
stories being told, they ask themselves, were there not other people there? Was it just,
exactly.
one group of people that exists throughout time? And we know that it's been a diversity of people, including women, that have made America into the country that it ultimately became. And so it's so important for us to truly be honest about our history by telling
Yep,
everyone's story so we can have an accurate picture of who we are as a nation.
absolutely, absolutely. And once you have an accurate picture, then you grow to respect the contributions of people like you and I and other women in this space. So, absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. So, many women throughout history crossed the borders, as we know, not by choice or by force or through slavery and displacement and conflict. So, how do these stories show up in histories that you tell when you're hosting a tour or a group of visitors?
Certainly, we try to include every major group that we can in our storytelling as it is relevant. We start with indigenous people, so we talk
Mhm.
about people like the Haudenosaunee people who were once called the Iroquois, and how women were clan mothers who participated in the Great Law of Peace, which was some of the early foundations of democracy on this continent, and later became something
Mhm.
that even we modeled our government after because they were people who observed this early form of government. So women from the beginning of North America were given key roles of leadership, starting with
Yeah.
indigenous women, right? But then when you think about the other women who subsequently came, enslaved African women as well as European women, then of course some of them, the enslaved African women, were forced to come here, obviously not by choice. But despite that, they still looked for ways to empower themselves and empower their communities, whether it was resistance
Yes.
to slavery or building institutions, educational students at a time that their children were barred from going to what was considered mainstream schools, or fighting in the civil rights movement. These women were crossing borders. And of
We
course, you
were.
have the women who were part of the different waves of feminism, whether it was the right to vote with with the suffrage movement, or really the right to be able to have bodily autonomy as well as equal economic footing, which happened during the 60s with the second wave of the women's rights movement. So many women from various different groups have been part of this effort to have a more equal society.
I think that it's more so important. And, some people will say, well, you have Women's History Month. So, what are you complaining for? What's the problem? And I find it almost sometimes offensive that not just being left out of conversation and then toss the month out of, 30 days, 31 days out of a full calendar year for us to celebrate us, and then we're not even going to talk about the assault on women's rights. That even today in 2026, that we're just supposed to just appreciate these little droppings that we received from the others. So I'm really excited that we're having this conversation because but it's unfortunate that we're still having these conversations, right? So that's what's so crazy.
And
So
I always when people take tours or have experiences with us, I always say this is the beginning of your intellectual journey for those who are
yeah,
newer to these topics. And I think that's the stance that we all have to have because when we look at our ancestors, they didn't wait to be given permission to learn their own history. They didn't wait for someone to hand it to them. And whether people are removing books from schools or they're trying to various things, the information is still accessible. And I just think this is all the things that are happening now to suppress history is just a reminder to us all that we have to be more proactive about not just teaching this history to each other, but to the next generation.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's kind of continue there. So when we talk about crossing borders, right? It can mean many things: geographic, cultural, even emotional. So how do you define the idea in the context of women's history? So what does that look like to you from all three limbs, including emotional?
Well, I mean, it kind of we can go back to Sojourner Truth, the early African American
Yes,
abolitionist as well as women's rights advocate, who said, "Ain't I a woman?" in her when she spoke at a convention in the 19th century, a woman's convention. She said, "Ain't I a woman?" And what she was talking about was the way African American women were expected to serve all these roles and be all these things, but at the same time as you're exploiting us, you're also saying women can't do certain things. So aren't I a woman, this person that
right.
been put upon, I've been put upon in all these ways. And so this whole idea is that we are not limited by any box, and so much of especially the early leaders looked at the spiritual perspective, that they were powerful beings. They just happened to be in the body of a woman, and
Yeah,
anything that enhanced the ability of what they were able to do, and not looking at it like gender is something that has to limit anyone. And I
yeah,
think that's what you see as a thread throughout women's history, is this idea that all gender does is it actually, of course, empowers us and gives us a different perspective. Not trying to say men and women have the same perspective. They, in many
absolutely.
cases may not, but that being a woman actually doesn't limit you from living to your fullest potential. And so much
Yeah,
of Women's History Month and the leaders that we highlight are simply giving women the right to live to their fullest potential, no matter how they define it. A lot of times, people try to, mischaracterize feminism as something that's saying that you have to have one stance as a woman, but really, true feminism, or
yeah,
as African American women would also use the term womanism. What it says, it's really about, I have the right to be the person I want to be on this planet. And the fact
absolutely.
that I'm a woman shouldn't limit me from any vision I may have. And that vision may be to be a homemaker, which is completely fine. But the vision may be to be a CEO or the president of
Exactly.
of a country. And so
Exactly.
that my gender shouldn't stand in the way of me being my fullest self, however we define it. And so throughout history, whether you see a wide and diverse range of women who are fighting for human rights, who are fighting for civil rights, and who are fighting for gender-based rights, but with the same purpose, to be able to be their fullest, most actualized self.
Yes, absolutely. And it's and thank you for reminding us the words and the wisdom of Sojourner Truth, because a lot of times you don't see that often. You don't see that in a postcard, or you don't see that in a story that's readily available. So that's perfect. So, but then let's also expand on that. What are some lesser known stories of women who forced these journeys to help shape American culture
Sure.
and identity? Who else is out there that we should be
Well, Septima
recognizing
Clark,
and we
I
can
mean, there's
forget?
so many, but I love Septima Clark, and I like to bring her up because so few people don't know about the secret mother of the civil rights movement. She's the one
Okay.
who started in the citizenship schools in the 1960s. So she was
Okay.
behind the scenes, and she was
Okay.
actually training people. She was in South Carolina. She was training people how to read and how
Okay.
to write so that they could go and be confident enough to try to vote. And her citizen schools ended up being a place where the next generation of leaders was being raised up, despite
Love it.
being threatened by the KKK, despite not having any accolades or any fanfare. She quietly did the work of building up local leaders as well as women leaders to become the foundation of the civil rights movement. And when she retired, the Southern Christian Leadership Council, which was led by Martin Luther King, ended up taking her citizenship schools and incorporating them into their model. So I love this story because this is a story of how, do not despise small beginnings. I think with
Do
all,
not despise
yeah,
small beginnings.
yes,
Okay.
yes, because I think right now, especially in light of the circumstance that many find, geopolitical circumstance we're in, it seems
Yeah.
overwhelming. A lot of people might feel like, what can I do in the face of all these things? But do your small part, because you never know what it's going to become. And maybe it's humble, maybe it's
Yeah.
just a small thing, but a combination of all of us doing small things, that's what changes the world. And so that's why I love her story, because she didn't know that her citizenship schools would end up becoming what they became. but she ended
Yeah.
up being one of the mothers, one of the unsung mothers of the civil rights movement.
That is fabulous. And I'm going to ask you to repeat her name. So when we're listening to this podcast, we know exactly where to go and find her story. So her name again is
Septima Clark.
Septima Clark. Got
Yeah,
it. We'll absolutely make sure we find some more about her. So let's dig a little deep into you and Inside Out Tours. And like I said, I know you do a variety of different things, but through your tours, how do you help people see beyond the surface and connect with these deeper, often hidden histories? So what
uh,
does that look like from the inside out, but inside out to what guests and visitors can experience when they're on one of your tours?
absolutely. So we have everything from historic neighborhood tours to art
Okay.
and culture tours to food tours. So we're about engaging all the senses and also music tours. So
Okay.
we approach learning about other cultures by engaging all the senses. We also have both in-person experiences that if you come to New York City, you can do. And also we are in the midst of launching experiences that are going to be leaving New York and exploring other parts of the country and the world. But we have
Yep.
virtual experiences that no matter where you are in the country, we have national virtual experiences, which are 360-degree experiencing features featuring experts
Mhm.
talking about different aspects of history and also different
Yeah.
cultures. And so now for many sort of employee resource groups and corporate groups, we're also doing things that explore the history of people of color, of women, of queer
Love it.
community, as well as the disabled community. So that is our next
Oh,
frontier
perfect.
because it's my personal belief that the disabled people are some of the most discriminated against people in the world. And I have disabled people in my own family, and I have longed to create experiences that would enable them to be able to have full access. So now I'm happy to say that we indeed have some experiences already, and we're launching more. And there's great
Congratulations.
history there as well. There's a great history behind the ADA, and so we want to make sure that everyone has a voice. And
Love it.
our experiences, whether we're doing you can do museum tours with us that are focused on the experiences of people of color and other
Yep.
communities, or you're listening to music, whether it's jazz or gospel, or you're just learning about the history of the Revolutionary War and all the people who are part of that in New York. There's so much history there that we love to share with our guests. And we've been around
Yeah.
for over 16 years and serviced hundreds of thousands of people with these experiences.
Love it, love it, love it. So often when we talk about marginalized communities and people, we always but and I've been blessed because I've been blessed that I don't have a family member that is inside of the disabled community. But we need to have more people like you that will think beyond just people who can walk up and down a trail or a bus. And also understanding that people learn and experience things at different places. So like I said, kudos to you for doing that and launching that, and let Inside Out Tours
I
be a
also want to
model.
add that the disabled community brings us a special gift. The disabled community shows us tenacity.
Mhm.
Disabled community has so much brilliance in it, and it's just that people don't know because they're pigeonholed. So part of what
Exactly.
I'm trying to do is emphasize the fact that the disabled community has a lot to offer to the world, and if they're given the opportunity, they'll show you what they have to offer, and a lot to
Yeah,
be proud of, and a lot that we can learn from. So part of our mission, other than opening up the city so it could be accessible, is to
right.
tell the stories of the courage, the bravery, and the leadership of people with disabilities.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Good job. Good job. Good job. Listen, a sister that is out here leading this initiative. I'm just so proud of you, and I'm just so glad that you're tackling this mission. So let's stay there just for a little bit. So is there a specific site or a stop where you feel that whether it's on a tour or an emerging tour where these stories of women crossing borders come to life? So is there a location, a stop that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, I mean, in terms of our storytelling, I would say these locations are across the country. It's hard for me to pinpoint just one
Of, of
because
course.
women have been impactful in so many areas of American life. What I would encourage is that when you visit any city, that you look for the story of women because
Okay.
the story is there. It's more that people don't talk about it. In terms of just sort of the heroines that I think about, I have heroines that are from every segment of history. Like I said, whether it's
Okay.
the women's rights movement,
Yeah.
or it's the the movement of the for suffrage, for universal suffrage, or whether it's the civil rights movement. There's so many people who sacrifice so that you and I can enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy. And my mission, the legacy I hope to leave behind is of a storyteller that didn't let
Okay.
stories die.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, some destinations get it right, right? They will go ahead and have those monumental accolades. And then some destinations don't get it right or they just don't know. So, where this is not a kind of a gotcha question, but where should this, what's the responsibility of the destinations and these cities and these communities? What's their responsibility, in your opinion, to go ahead and having these things forward facing, and also to include this as part of their city or destination narrative?
Well, I think first of all, most destination management organizations have a membership that, if they were encouraged to actually look up the stories, could help bring
Yeah,
them to light. And once those stories are brought to light by your membership, who are close to the ground and probably best situated to even learn those stories, then the next step would be to feature them, whether
yeah.
it's social media or some other fashion on the website of the destination. And there might be a lot of surprise that there's actually great interest in these types of topics.
Yeah, and I think that, considering that, so, we see it for Black History Month. A lot of these cities will put together Black History Month content or doing Juneteenth. But doing Women's History Month, maybe the destination should have a responsibility to offering specially or be more intentional about offering specific women's history themed tours or stories, or even if it's a narrative on their website. I think that you're right. The more that what we have, like I said, be more intentional about
Yeah,
spotlighting the contributions of women, but at a minimum, showcase that during Women's History Month. So then it shows that not just you're looking at the story that leader, or like you said, that heroism that was in that city, but also you're sharing that with the other people that's coming in. So it does show that you're not you're not being tone deaf to the story, even though it is doing Women's History Month. So I think that you're right. Cities and destinations can absolutely do more, as they should.
right. And this is actually also a financial benefit because as you're engaging your members to kind of and in addition to doing your own research, then now people have even additional reason to actually go and visit your destination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so coming down to the last couple of questions. So, for our listeners today, especially women navigating their own journey, right? What do you hope that they take away from these stories of these women who were crossing borders, and basically what our role is to continue to be impactful in the things that we do and the places that we go and the people that you see. So, what do you think that we should take away from these heroism and the Sojourner Truths and all of these women who set their marks in as a part of American history?
Well, they have that saying, the past is prologue. We come from a context, right? And there have
Yep.
been things that have existed before. If we
Okay.
study the patterns of the past, we know how to live in the present. That's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by history. There's actually a
Okay.
blueprint.
Love it.
Maybe the circumstances have been different, but there are ways in which people empowered themselves over time. So, one of the
Okay.
great benefits of learning these stories is to understand how people who came before us actually dealt with different circumstances and perhaps find applicable ways to deal with our current circumstances based on the past.
Yep. I listen. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you come from.
Exactly.
And so often that we have the benefit of modeling our behavior, our actions off of people who did it before us and who did it right, and who did it under the lens of not having social media and all of this other stuff that we have to do it right. So I think it's a perfect way to just kind of I guess just kind of be a mentor to other women who are looking to make a difference, to get their hands dirty and go in here and import change, because a lot of us will say, I don't know how, I don't know what I'm doing, but you just got to go back into the history books and just dig into those that did it to us. So, all right. So last question before we wrap up. So I know you've been in the business for a long time. You've kind of been a little bit of all over the world. You're traveling. So if I was to go on the Inside Out Tours website and I had to pick, I can go anywhere. What would be your number one? And I know you could be biased. Must see tour that I should do. So based on all the work that you've done and all of the stops and places that you've been, what is your must see attraction if I had to spend a day with Inside Out?
It's hard to narrow it down.
I know.
I will answer in light of our current geopolitical circumstance. And I would
Okay.
say that would be our Black Joy Tour.
Black Joy Tour.
Yes. This is a private experience that we offer where we go to Seneca Village, which was the location of a Black village that was destroyed for the building of Central Park. We also go to Harlem, and we tell the stories of how African Americans have empowered themselves through economic cooperatives, through education, through art, through music, through journalism,
Okay.
using the lens of those two areas. The reason I recommend that tour is because I think we need to understand that people have gone through, believe it or not, way worse than what many of us are facing today, and they've still been triumphant. And if we use those same tools, we can also overcome whatever these obstacles may be. So that would be the tour that I recommend.
The Black Joy Tour. So we know that that's where we go and that's what we're booking. So to wrap things up, to learn more about Inside Out Tours, I know we can find you online. So just tell us a little bit, individuals, groups, tell us a little bit how we find you,
Absolutely.
the ideal group.
So InsideOutTours.com has everything from information on our in-person experiences, our virtual experiences, our multi-day experiences. So if you go to InsideOutTours.com, you can learn all about us there.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so Stacey, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Our goal is, I of course, you are phenomenal. I know you are. But the ideal person to talk about this during this month. And our goal with this podcast is not just to kind of, have this thing come on, during Women's History Month and during the A250 roundup, but also to kind of memorialize the things that we need to remember. And you're the right person to do it. So I want to thank you for being my guest. I'm so excited. I think when it gets warm, because I'm a Jersey girl, but I can't go into New York when it's cold. So I will be doing the Black Joy Tour.
Can I just add one more thing? I'm very excited that this year we're actually going to be launching what we hope to be an annual Juneteenth weekend in New York, where we will be celebrating Juneteenth in all its aspects of speaking about these early Black communities, as well as the resistance against slavery and the Underground Railroad. So I invite everyone to come and join us in New York City for that monumental event.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm headed to the city. As long as it's warm, I'll be there. So, but this has been wonderful. All right, Stacey, thank you so much for being on our podcast, America's Hidden 250. We love you. We will be you. We ask our listeners to come out and support you and go ahead and just take advantage of this wealth of information that Inside Out Tours brings us. So thank you again. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Hidden 250. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcast and join the conversation by following us on social media. I'm Karen Aaron, and until next time, this is Hidden 250.